So, we have finished off the non-specific part of it, non-specific part of infections caused by those organisms in the bone as well as joint. Now we are coming to more specificity, that is specific for your purpose tuberculosis, right. One of my friends in the childhood, more specifically around 10 years back, I just remember she used to call this as tuberculosis. The moment I see this, I have a remembrance of her. It's called, she used to call it as tuberculosis, right. And again, if I can remember, tuberculosis is a chronic infectious disease caused by Staphylococcus aureus, was the answer written by one of the students in an exam that unfortunately I was correcting that paper. I cannot forget in my lifetime, tuberculosis is caused by Staphylococcus aureus. Unfortunate. Tuberculosis per se, right? It by itself is giving its name. I am causing it, right? It's a disgrace to the tuberculous bacteria, right? So tuberculosis is a chronic infection caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. This is a constitutional infection, right? A generalized disorder with a localized manifestation, more specifically in the bone and joint. Okay, so it is a constitutional disorder. You have a lot of constitutional symptoms in tuberculosis, but when it comes to bone and joint, those are those things that we are going to learn now. So bone and joint TB constitutes about 1 to 4% of all the cases of tuberculosis, and involvement of bone and joint is always secondary to the lesion elsewhere. That elsewhere is either a lung or a lymph node or gut. Never bone and joint tuberculosis is directly primary. Tuberculosis should come into this body either through the lung or through the lymph nodes or through the gut, and only then it goes to the bone. It will never directly come to the bone, and it is a chronic disorder, right. It is a slow onset, slowly progressing disorder most often, and bone and joint tuberculosis is really a deadly disorder also, because the treatment part is very cumbersome and very much prolonged. Usually in pulmonary tuberculosis, primary detected directly, you treat those patients for 6 months. But in tuberculosis of bone and joint, 6 months into 3 is the answer. You have to treat them for 18 months. So, you should not allow these patients either to go into that phase or detect this bone and joint tuberculosis as early as possible, so that the treatment becomes, of course, even if you detect early also you have to give for 18 months. Right, the minimum will be 1 year, optimum will be 18 months. Okay, and in this bone and joint tuberculosis, spine is the commonest site of this affection. So nearly 50% of bone and joint tuberculosis will be in the spine, 15% will be in the hip, and 5 to 10% will be in the knee. So most often, if you know that tuberculosis is about spine, hip and knee, you know more than 75% of your bone and joint tuberculosis. Okay. So bone and joint tuberculosis can be 2 types. If it is affecting the bone, you call it as tubercular osteomyelitis. If it is affecting the joint, you call it as tubercular arthritis, tubercular synovitis. So this term you just please try to remember. In the short bones or in the phalanges, you call it as tubercular dactylitis. It is also called as spina ventosa. Spina ventosa is nothing but tubercular dactylitis, which is affecting the short tubular bones of the hand. Tuberculosis of the spine is called as Pott's disease, right? Pott's disease of spine. And one more thing, tuberculosis of the shoulder joint is called as caries sicca, because it is more of granulation tissue than pus. It is more proliferative than exudative, hence it is called as caries sicca. You do not find a lot of exudation there. Usually in cases of tuberculosis of shoulder, it is called as caries sicca. Sometimes tuberculosis can affect the tendons and tendon sheaths more specifically, synovium in the tendon sheaths, which are covering the tendon sheaths at the wrist joint, leading to a swelling both in the hand as well as at the distal end of the forearm, right. It is called as compound palmar ganglion. It is an affection of the synovium, it is an affection of the synovium, which is covering the tendons at the wrist, more specifically flexor tendons. Okay, it is called as tenosynovitis. Tenosynovitis of the flexor tendons of the wrist is called as compound palmar ganglion. And most often a bursa which may be there on the lateral aspect of the greater trochanter, right? It is also affected by tuberculous bacilli and hence ends up in a bursitis called as trochanteric bursitis, right? You can, whenever you see such a condition, keep this one in mind. Tuberculosis may be a possibility. So, tuberculous bursitis of the trochanteric bursa is also a common finding. Now, who are predisposed to this? Those who are living in closed communities, who are of low socioeconomic group, malnourished, stressed, right, and who don't take proper diet, who don't have proper immunity, immunosuppressed, and now after having this HIV on rise, tuberculosis has become more and more prevalent and it has become more and more resistant for treatment. So, you should be very careful. All these things and contact with active cases, active disease are those predisposing factors. Once these tuberculous bacteria, I told you, it cannot directly come into the bone, it has to come through lung lymph nodes most commonly, and once it is coming there, it goes to the portion and causes a pathology, and the pathology is common in all the places. The pathology of tuberculosis is common in all the places. Most often it is a chronic granulomatous inflammation with caseous central necrosis. The pathology is same, central caseous necrosis and chronic granulomatous pathology. And if at all you have to take one unit and say into 10 units will become tuberculosis, that unit is called tubercle, a granulomatous lesion. Tubercle have a central caseous necrosis surrounding by what? Chronic cells, chronic inflammatory cells, epithelioid cells, Langerhans joint cells, okay? All of these constitute a tubercle, and these tubercles are there as granuloma, and that forms a granulation, chronic granulomatous inflammatory response, right? Sometimes if the caseation is more of pus will come. That pus will not give all the symptoms of pus formed in acute osteomyelitis or septic arthritis, hence it is called as cold abscess. That is also abscess, this is also abscess, that is also pus, this is also pus, but that is hot, this is cold, it is hot coffee, this is cold coffee, right? So, the response may be either proliferative with all the granulation tissue and tubercles with less of caseation, that is proliferative. Exudative is more of caseation. Same granulomatous reaction is there, but more of caseation. This is the central necrosis surrounded by epithelioid cells, Langerhans scattered, surrounded by lymphocytes, histiocytes, epithelioid cells and Langerhans joint cells. Now, what happens once you have a bone and joint tuberculosis? It follows some natural history. Now, once there is an inflammation, if it were to be tubercular osteomyelitis, same I told you, there will be necrosis of the bone there, demineralization of the bone, and once there is increased hyperemia, more blood coming into that portion as a resolving process, right? What happens is lot of calcium is lost from the bone, you have demineralization, decalcification and demineralization. That bone at that zone looks more lucent, okay? A zone of tuberculosis looks more radiolucent when compared to the other zone. That is one most important point you need to remember. If it is a tuberculous arthritis, juxta-articular osteopenia is the most important factor you should never remember. So, in and around the joint there will be lot of decalcification, hyperemic decalcification, and the bone looks more radiolucent, more hazy. It will not look more dark, more white, it looks more dark. Okay, it looks on the more of grey shade, more rather than more whiter. Okay, that is one. So, in the absence of adequate body resistance, right, what happens? The cortices, all the bone gets necrosed, and you have sequestrum formation, pus formation. This pus again can go out same like acute osteomyelitis, but not with all those classical features of osteomyelitis being hot. It will be spreading slowly, and things will be very cold. Patient will be having all the constitutional symptoms. That's why I told. The constitutional symptoms will be more, that means weight loss. So, what are the constitutional symptoms of tuberculosis? Anorexia, malaise, easy fatigability, weight loss, excessive sweating, evening rise of temperature, significant weight loss, evening rise of temperature. If the pathology is more for so long a time and it has destroyed the joint and the raw areas are rubbing against each other, patient will get up with pain at night. It is called as night cries, classical of tuberculosis or even advanced arthritis. These are all the features of tuberculosis. Evening rise of temperature, evening sweating, excessive sweating, pallor, anemia, patient losing a lot of weight. These are all the constitutional symptoms. Now once the pathology has gone to a bone and organized itself, it has eaten away some portion, you have an abscess formed that is called as cold abscess. It can take the path of least resistance and track along the nerves, blood vessels and get accumulated at one portion. At that portion you will see that as a swelling, but the pathology may be somewhere else. So it tracks because it is cold. Things are not that much as visible as you see in hot variety of it, that is seen in acute hematogenous osteomyelitis or septic arthritis. If that bone is loaded, you will end up in a pathological fracture at times, and if it affects the joint, you will end up in a pathology which similarly looks like a septic arthritis, wherein, right, the symptoms are not that aggressive. Again, now once this goes into a joint, the synovium will be there, lot of synovitis will come in, synovium will become boggy, thickened, it exudates some amount of exudation, there will be pus collection. This pus, just like septic arthritis, pus will be there, the pus distends the joint, and if there may be pathological subluxation or dislocation of the joint, at times if there is a rent in the capsule, it goes out as a cold abscess and get track at some other place, or if it just pierces the skin out, it can come out as a sinus or a fistula. Simple, all those things what you have seen there can also happen here, but things will be very much on the slower side. Now what happens is, once there is an intense granulation tissue and synovitis going on, the synovium which is there within the joint, right, it will not come and directly eat away from the center. The synovitis which is there will eat this cartilage from the periphery. This is the classical difference between septic arthritis and tuberculous arthritis. In septic arthritis, what is happening is, the lysosomal enzymes which are secreted by these Staphylococcus aureus and all those organisms, they directly go and kill the cartilage cells. But here in septic tuberculous arthritis, the proliferating granulation tissue because of granulation, granulomas happening, synovitis happening because of tubercle bacilli, will go and eat the juxta-articular bone. The bone which is surrounding the cartilage will be eaten away, punched out lesions will come in, intense decalcification will happen, juxta-articular decalcification will happen, and slowly the cartilage is being eaten away from the periphery to the center. Hence, if it is eaten away completely, you will end up in a joint without any cartilage. At that time, you can have these raw areas rubbing against each other, you can have night pains, and if they are stabilized in that position, you have a arthrodized joint, ankylosed joint. Okay. If total amount of cartilage is gone, you can still have bony ankylosis, but it is very rare in tuberculosis. Usually some amount of cartilage will be spared. Hence, most often you end up in fibrous ankylosis. This is what happens in tuberculous ankylosis.